Welcome to Read, Think, Act, a video series brought to you from Lighthouse Bookshop in Edinburgh. I'm Peach, and I'm a bookseller here, and this is Joy White, a lecturer in Applied Social Studies, and the author of Urban Music and Entrepreneurship, Beats, Rhymes and Young People's Enterprise, one of the first books to ever really look into the importance of grime music, and then also Terraformed, which is this book here, which is an insider ethnography of Forest Gate, which is a small neighbourhood in East London in the borough Newham. I'm very excited to be talking to Joy about this. As someone who grew up in Forest Gate and the neighbouring Stratford, it is very much a privilege to be able to do this. I was just wondering why you chose to use music, particularly grime, as a way to explore the political importance of Forest Gate.
First of all, thanks for inviting me. It's always nice to be able to talk about the work that you've done. You never quite know where it's going to end up or how people are going to engage with it. So having the opportunity to talk about it is great. I suppose my research has been about, on the whole, has been about Black British contemporary music, particularly grime, and not just the music as a genre, but also the stories and the stories that the music allows you to tell, and the lives that you're able to see because people make, listen to, and share grime music. And so when I came to, in the first major bit of research I did, I looked at how young people use their passion for making and listening to grime to reinvent themselves, to recreate and to create new identities, to step into identities as DJs or MCs or entrepreneurs. And these were young people who, on the whole, weren't deemed to be life success stories. They were young people who were at school that weren't expected to get the kind of 5 A-star to C GCSEs that was like the golden ticket to a good college. These were young people that the school said were likely to be neat, not in education, employment or training. So grime music for those young people at the time was a way to be all the things they wanted to be, really, to be successful, to get positive feedback, later on a way to make a living. It gave people opportunities to see different roles, different ways of living, to travel. So grime music for me was a kind of, a perspective that I could look through to see how young Black people in particular were living and kind of navigating their lives. And so when I came to write Terraformed, and it's set in Newham. Newham is one of the birthplaces of grime music. It's one of the sites that grime music emerged from. I didn't see how I could leave it out because it was a kind of fundamental part of the fabric that made Newham, the bit of Newham that I was looking at least, what it was. And the framework of hyperlocal demarcation includes the sonic landscape, but it also includes town planning, legislation and policies, and the community, and how all of those things woven together allow a kind of, allow us to look at an area and see what the struggles are, really, see what the struggles are, as well as the joys.
That's amazing. I very much remember throughout my high school years, just like everyone being in like playgrounds that were definitely meant for 5-year-olds, and basketball courts, just like sitting down, Brighton bars, recording themselves on tiny little phones, which it's great, and I think it is very, very much, as you say, part of the sonic landscape, which is why it's so interesting when you apply that into the wider framework of this like hyper individualism of neoliberalism, and how it's just incredibly difficult for those people who are simultaneously hyper visible and located outside of what people deem to be someone who's going to get very far in life, as you say. Um, so I was wondering if you could say a little bit more about the history of Forest Gate within neoliberalism, and I suppose an understanding of the hostile environment, and yeah.
Yeah. I suppose what I would say is that one of the main reasons that the book came about was because I've been having these kind of conversations with young people that were in my life in one way or another. And I write about grime, which is a contemporary 21st century Black British musical form. But my natural home, if you like, is sound systems and dancehall. I'm not of the generation that I write about. So I end up having these conversations with lots of young people from different walks of life. And there was this idea that somehow if life was difficult, if you couldn't start your adult independent life, then it was your fault. You were doing something wrong. And over time, I kind of realized, because I had a life before this kind of neoliberal agenda, I had a life before Thatcher, that young people had grown up in this system for so long that it was common sense. It was common sense for them. And there wasn't that way of trying to not even make it plain, because I'm not even making those claims for the book, that I've explained things. I was trying to find a way to position some of the pieces so that in particular young people themselves could make sense of those different pieces. And so there's a reason why there isn't affordable housing. There's a reason why people have to shift out of their area if they want to be able to live somewhere that they can afford. There's a reason why employment is precarious and insecure. There are reasons why, we are one of the most surveilled nations, in Europe. There's a reason why, if you're young and you make a mistake and you end up with a criminal record, then in the past it would have been down to a kind of youthful time when people take risks, and now it kind of blights the rest of your life, and you never come back from it. All of these things, as well as tuition fees that tripled, the list could go on and on. And so I was trying to help make sense of some of this, and I could see the changes that had happened in the area that I was very familiar with. I'm very familiar with Forest Gate. I've lived here for a long time. I grew up here, and even when I'd stepped out of Forest Gate and gone to Plaistow or Stratford for a little bit, I ended up back here. So I'd been here for so long, I didn't actually notice the changes as they were occurring. It was so gradual. And then one day I kind of looked around and realized that the voices had changed, the sounds had changed, some of the landmarks. The local pub had rebranded itself as a gastro pub. It was gradual. And I thought, well, what does that mean? What does that mean for the young people that are still here or trying to be here? How does that happen? And it was, and so Terraformed was an attempt to try and bring those kind of disparate conversations, changes in the area, and to try and bring some of that together in a way that young people could make sense of it for themselves. One of the things that we can do, I think, is to resist the hyper individualism, is to be in a sense of community with one another, is to really recognize when the so-called powers that be are creating division, so that we fight amongst each other, we you know, I'm sounding like an old revolutionary, but when I say we the people, what has happened, and it's becoming easier and easier to do with these kind of fractured politics, is that, you know, we're invited to turn on each other. We are invited to turn on each other and to look at other people and say, well, you know, why have they got that? I don't have that. Instead of looking at why we don't all have secure employment, a secure home, you know, a decent place to live. It is about refusing and resisting those divisions that are given to us as a distraction. They really are a distraction, because while we're looking at each other and finding fault with each other along class or race or ethnic lines, whatever it is, whatever the division might be, the companies that are too big to fail, the circos that get the 14 billion for test and trace that didn't work, that still goes on. But there's you know, there's no magic money tree until there is a magic money tree for the corrupt and the cronies, you know. And what COVID revealed quite starkly was the kind of rampant inequality, and unequal societies are the least likely to resist when these things happen, because people don't have the capacity. But we're getting there. I think we're getting there. Well, in the end, it has to tip into that place where we suddenly remember about our humanity and who we are, and that we have more in common than the things that set us apart, and that the common enemy is not your neighbor, it's them.
Yeah, no, I get that. I don't think that you sound like an old revolutionary, and you know what? If you do, then we need to bring it back, because you do speak about community efforts throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s in your book, and they're incredible. I suppose following on from that is I suppose how incredible it is that music does emerge from that, and this idea of like music as community, but also as resistance. And we know that it's resistance because it's constantly censored. And yeah, I just want you to speak about more about how music and grime, and I suppose drill now as well, there is this great community effort, and youth, and black youth in particular, are telling us, and we're just refusing to listen, or labeling it as some sort of thing that's completely related to gangs, or however it is that we decide we want to censor them.
Yeah. I mean, it's so for me, as I said before, I'm from the generation before. I'm from the generation of reggae sound systems and so on. I grew up in Newham at a time that I describe in the early part of the book, where Newham was quite a difficult place to be if you were from a Black, Asian, or ethnic minority community. In the 70s and in the 80s, it could be a difficult place in a lot of ways, and it could be a place that was quite hostile as well. And what is so interesting for me is that the next generation, the grime generation, if you like, found a way to take the music of their parents' generation, connect it to the place that they were in, and create a sound that spoke to them, to make music that mattered for them. And at the same time, even though it was very local in its origins, created something that then kind of spreads throughout the UK and then throughout the world. And I think it speaks to the resilience and the resistance of those young people, their determination to do something to do something and make something. And that's no mean feat. I think it's incredible what they were able to do, and then to kind of set the template for what comes after. And I don't think that UK drill could have happened in the same way without those foundations that had been put in place by grime. And grime shook up the world. You know, young people with very, very little came together, and if you think about the way that UK drill is spoken about now, in its early days, it was that was the experience of young people who are making grime. Oh, it's about violence, it's terrible, the young people, they're in gangs, and so on. All of those familiar tropes and stereotypes. And we roll on almost 2 decades and we're hearing the same story in a slightly different way. But actually what you say is true, that, you know, are we so concerned about the content, or are we so concerned about the people that make it? And if we are concerned about the content, then maybe we ought to pay attention to the messages that young people are trying to tell us. Music is powerful in a number of ways. It can give a sense of belonging, a sense of hope, a sense of connection and community. Can't underestimate its positive attributes, and what it can just do for people. All people, but young. I write about young people in the book, so what it can do with young people at their best times, and at their worst times as well. You know, kind of keeps people going. So I think that as a kind of contemporary Black British musical art form, it stands on its own. It's and yeah, I kind of take my hat off to the young people that had the whatever it was to bring those sounds of the past from their parents into the sounds that they were experiencing, and make something that was new and relevant, that resonated throughout the world. Yeah.
Well, I think what you're saying there is so important, and I mean, you end the book really by saying we know what to do, which I think is an incredibly powerful statement. I also think it's entirely true. This idea that there are multiple forms of resistance. We need to listen. We need to see what's happening around us, and I don't think that that's particularly specific just to Forest Gate. I think that's really everywhere currently. Throughout the past year, you know, we've just been given reading lists and told, like, here's what to read. Now you know, and they're not, like, we're never really told that we're meant to do something with that knowledge, that it's meant to just end there after you've read the book, as if the information by itself is going to get us anywhere. And so, yeah, I think, yeah, I don't know. I was just going to say, what can we do with this information, in your opinion? What did you want when you wrote this book?
I think I wanted, because one of the things that our kind of hostile anti-Black environment does is it kind of it erases or doesn't easily make visible past efforts and past histories. And so when you have young people that are kind of disconnected from their past or their history, who don't really have that knowledge of how their families came to be here, or the contribution that their communities have made, then kind of leaves people in this state of, well, you know, can't make too much fuss because. So what I hoped was to begin that kind of intergenerational conversation, to share those histories that may seem obvious, but they're not, because they've been purposefully or inadvertently, I don't know, erased, not taught in, there are reasons why, Black history is not taught in schools, and there's resistance to Black history being taught in schools, because that knowledge is useful and it's powerful as well. So that's what I hoped, was to start a conversation that recognises the past endeavours, that shows where the blueprints are that can be used for now and what comes after. And we don't have to start everything from scratch. Some of it's been done already. It needs to be just adapted and made real for now. So that's what I hoped. And the we depends on who you are. We know what to do. The we depends on who you are, and the we depends on informs what you can do and who you can come together with to make that difference, because we all have it in our power to do something.
Yeah. Thank you. That was so beautifully put, and I do think that you did do that with this book, or at least I feel that you did that with this book. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.